Back in 2007, the entertainment world was rocked by a discovery that seemed almost too sensational to be true. Hollywood Truth magazine reported that they had obtained a secret notebook belonging to Burt Lancaster, the iconic star of Hollywood's golden age. But this wasn't the intimate memoir fans might have expected. There were no heartfelt reflections on his legendary career, no behind-the-scenes stories of filmmaking triumphs or personal struggles. Instead, the notebook contained something far more provocative, a carefully compiled blacklist. Within its pages, Lancaster named some of the industry's biggest stars, describing them not as the charming, beloved figures audiences adored, but as the most malicious and treacherous personalities Hollywood had ever produced. Friends who turned into rivals, colleagues who plotted in shadows, and public images that hid shocking private realities, all were meticulously documented. The revelations were not only personal, they threatened to rewrite the narrative of an entire era of filmmaking. What drove Lancaster, a man widely admired for his integrity and professionalism, to expose such secrets in his later years? Was it a quest for justice, a need to unburden himself, or simply a desire to ensure the truth was remembered beyond the glittering facade of fame? And as we read the names and the stories he left behind, we begin to see Hollywood not as a kingdom of dreamers, but as a battlefield where ambition, jealousy, and betrayal often lurked behind every smile and handshake. In this video, we dive into the pages of Burt Lancaster's notebook, peeling back the golden veneer of Hollywood's most celebrated era. We reveal the hidden truths, the dark legacies, and the shocking betrayals of 7 legends whose glittering careers masked lives of cunning, deceit, and scandal. For those who believe the golden age of Hollywood was all glamour and grace, this story will shatter that illusion and show that even the brightest stars cast the darkest shadows. Kirk Douglas. Kirk Douglas was the heroic face of mid-20th century cinema, starring in Spartacus, Paths of Glory, and countless epics. But Lancaster painted a far darker portrait. Beneath the charm and defiance, Douglas allegedly ruled through fear. He meddled in casting, pressured producers, and punished anyone who defied him. One infamous case, an actress reportedly lost a major role in 1959 after rejecting his dinner invitation. Lancaster even claimed Douglas used drugs, buying, distributing, and leveraging them to enforce compliance. Publicly, Douglas symbolized courage and freedom. Privately, Lancaster described him as a predator in human skin, leaving a trail of ruined careers in his wake. The contrast between myth and reality could not have been starker. Elizabeth Taylor. Hollywood adored Elizabeth Taylor for her violet eyes, breathtaking beauty, and screen-shattering talent. But behind the glamour, Lancaster saw a tempest few could survive. On the set of Cleopatra in 1962, that storm erupted. Taylor reportedly barricaded herself in her dressing room for nearly 14 hours over a dispute about a costume color, bringing production to a standstill and costing the studio thousands. When the director demanded she return, she famously hurled a glass of wine at his face, a bold, unignorable declaration of both temper and authority. Yet this public drama was only the surface. Lancaster claimed Taylor had perfected manipulation with surgical precision. Her marriages, often celebrated in tabloids as fairy tale romances, were battlegrounds behind closed doors. With Richard Burton, she allegedly guided his career like a chess master, influencing executives and bending decisions to her will. She understood the weight of her name, her image, and her star power, and wielded it like a weapon. To Lancaster, she wasn't merely a diva prone to mood swings. She was Hollywood's queen of influence, a force of nature cloaked in velvet charm. Natalie Wood. Natalie Wood was Hollywood's fragile sweetheart, often cast as the innocent girl next door, but Lancaster argued her delicacy was a calculated weapon. Her tears were never just emotion, they were leverage. On one production, she staged a fainting spell that halted filming for hours until producers conceded to her demands. Co-stars she disliked quietly vanished from the set, their careers subtly sabotaged by her influence. Her death in 1981, officially ruled an accident, remains shrouded in speculation. Lancaster hinted at a darker story, suggesting the sea only hid the consequences of her maneuvers. In his telling, her final years were spent weaving invisible webs of control, manipulating friends, bending colleagues, and quietly shaping careers, all while the world saw only innocence. Her life, Lancaster suggested, ended as dramatically as it had unfolded, a haunting Hollywood mystery.
Mickey Rooney, cruel behind the smile. Few actors in Hollywood history were as universally adored as Mickey Rooney, the boyish dynamo whose energy lit up screens for decades. From Andy Hardy to countless comedies, audiences saw a playful, warm-hearted star, the kind of performer who seemed incapable of malice. But according to Lancaster, the cameras captured only a fraction of the truth. Behind that endless grin, Rooney allegedly harbored a darker, cruel streak. Extras and minor actors, the lifeblood of any film set, were often the targets of his sharp tongue. He reportedly mocked them relentlessly, using humiliation as entertainment, watching as smaller stars shrank under his gaze. What the public saw as charisma, those close to him sometimes recognized as control. His personal life was reportedly no kinder. Lancaster's account portrays Rooney as a man who dominated the spaces around him, particularly his marriages. One incident in 1967 allegedly saw him striking his wife on set simply for being late, leaving colleagues shocked and silent. Other times he is said to have confined his wives within the home, treating domestic life as another stage for exerting power. For millions, Rooney was the embodiment of joy and laughter, yet those in his inner circle allegedly knew a man who thrived on fear and subjugation, someone whose charm was a mask for manipulation and cruelty. It was a duality few could reconcile, the star the world loved and the tyrant lurking in private. Marilyn Monroe, a black hole in Hollywood. If Rooney was cruel behind a cheerful facade, Monroe was chaos in motion. Perhaps the most iconic star of her era, she has long been remembered as tragic, fragile, and enchanting. Lancaster, however, painted a far more complicated picture. During Some Like It Hot, Monroe reportedly disappeared from set without warning, leaving cast and crew stranded and anxious for hours. To Lancaster, these absences were not mere caprices, but strategic maneuvers. Monroe allegedly weaponized her fragility, turning her persona of vulnerability into a tool of influence. Her reach extended far beyond the set. Secret liaisons with powerful men gave her leverage over producers and studio heads alike. One such instance involved Jack Warner. When he suggested she work alongside a different male actor, Monroe is said to have staged an emotional breakdown, bending the project to her will. Her reputation as a delicate, damaged figure masked a formidable presence, a black hole in Hollywood, as Lancaster described it, whose gravity disrupted schedules, careers, and even the intentions of powerful men. To the public, she was the tragic star undone by fame and circumstance. To Lancaster, she was the eye of a storm, a woman whose influence and unpredictability left a permanent mark on the industry. Both Rooney and Monroe illustrate a hidden reality of Hollywood, a world where the brightest smiles can hide cruelty and the softest voices can mask formidable power. Behind the glamour and applause, Lancaster suggests the true nature of these legends was far more complex, far darker, and infinitely more human than the myths the public cherished. Errol Flynn, the name alone conjures swashbuckling charm, dashing heroes, and the thrill of adventure.
On screen, he was Robin Hood, the epitome of gallantry. Off-screen, according to Lancaster, he was something far more sinister, a devil in a gentleman's suit. Behind that grin lay a world of excess, a labyrinth of drugs, violence, and predation. Parties weren't just wild, they were dangerous. Allegations of trafficking and abuse followed him like a shadow, yet wealth and connections kept him untouchable. Victims whispered in fear, silenced by intimidation, while fans adored the man who leapt from rooftops and stole hearts. To Lancaster, Flynn wasn't a hero. He was a monster hidden in Hollywood's golden glow. And then there was Lucille Ball. America adored her, the queen of comedy whose laughter lit up living rooms across the nation. But Lancaster's notebook painted a chillingly different picture. Behind the radiant smile, he claimed, was a ruthless commander at Desilu Studios. Employees were tracked like chess pieces. 3 mistakes and you were out. Writers summoned to meetings were mocked mercilessly, humiliated in front of peers. Hidden microphones allegedly recorded every slip. One story lingered with Lancaster, a script thrown back at its writer, Ball's laughter echoing as ambition crushed dreams. Her laughter once saved CBS, he wrote, but it could also destroy lives. Her smile, able to build empires or ruin them.
Joan Crawford dazzled on screen, her presence commanding, her elegance unmatched, her gaze unforgettable. To fans and critics alike, she was the very image of Hollywood glamour, a queen of the silver screen whose charisma seemed effortless. But behind the lights and the cameras, her life told a far darker story. According to Burt Lancaster's notebook, Crawford's home was anything but the haven her public persona suggested. He described her as a woman who instilled fear, whose very presence could make those around her tense and cautious. Crawford's own daughter, Christina, later confirmed the terrifying accounts, revealing a pattern of cruelty that went far beyond stern parenting. Christina spoke of punishments that were brutal and calculated, including beatings with coat hangers and public humiliations for the smallest perceived missteps. The horror wasn't random, it was systematic. Joan Crawford's violence was a tool of control, a way to dominate her children and manipulate the emotional climate of her household. Lancaster wrote that she wielded both physical punishment and psychological manipulation, transforming her home into a place of dread, where love and fear were inseparably tangled. Her obsession with perfection extended far beyond the screen. Joan Crawford demanded flawlessness in her career, but she expected the same from her children. Mistakes were met not with guidance, but with wrath, punishment, and shame. To the world, she remained a shining Hollywood star, a symbol of sophistication and poise. To Lancaster and her family, she was a tyrant who believed fear was a more reliable tool than love. Every command, every reprimand, every act of violence reinforced her authority, and the cost was a childhood filled with tension, anxiety, and submission. Burt Lancaster's accounts are not merely sensationalist anecdotes. They serve as a stark reminder of the darker truths lurking behind Hollywood's golden facade. The era that birthed some of cinema's most beloved icons was also home to manipulation, intimidation, and abuse. For every dazzling performance on screen, there were shadows off-screen, storms of anger, control, and fear that shaped the lives of those closest to these stars. Whether Lancaster's accounts were fully accurate or slightly exaggerated, the message resonates. Fame and glamour often hide complexity and cruelty. Hollywood's legends were not just crafted by talent and beauty, they were also forged through secrecy, dominance, and the meticulous cultivation of image over truth. Which of these hidden realities shocks you most? The heroes who became predators, the beloved stars who ruled with iron fists, or the icons who weaponized tears and fragility? Comment below with your thoughts and subscribe to uncover more untold stories from the shadows of Hollywood's golden age.